Evaluating a marriage, 10 qualities needing your urgent appraisal. Hi friends, welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video is all about the importance of evaluating a marriage. Do you know you must evaluate your marriage to clearly understand how your relationship is faring? Why should I evaluate my marriage? Most of you feel so, don't you? You're wrong. You drastically need to evaluate your marriage to realize whether you're making a good job out of it or making a mess out of it. Will your marriage succeed or will it fail miserably? The answers to these questions will be revealed to you only when you sit back and evaluate your marriage. If you think that your marriage will improve and survive on its own, you'll definitely be disappointed. Your marriage needs many intricate aspects to give freshness and sheen to it. You and your spouse should work together to usher in these intricacies into your married life. If you overlook these aspects as not important, your marriage will unquestionably tilt towards failure. Let us see the aspects you should evaluate in your marriage. The number one aspect to be evaluated in your marriage is the level of your tolerance. Are you tolerant towards the faults of your spouse? When in love, you understandingly overlook the mistakes of your spouse. But after your marriage, the total picture changes. Your level of tolerance towards your spouse dips dangerously low. Whatever your spouse does makes you feel tense and stressed because you lose your tolerance. You're more than ready to take a magnifying glass to find faults with your spouse. The minor mistakes of your spouse are magnified and blown out of proportion by you. Your spouse too does the same. Here are some tricks to increase your tolerance level. Accept your spouse for what he or she is. Do not indulge in petty fights with the sole intention of degrading your spouse. Understand the simple fact that your spouse is an individual and so will be different from you. The number two aspect to be evaluated in your marriage is the level of your emotional support. You should evaluate your marriage to understand whether it has emotional support embedded into it. Emotional support is very essential for a successful married life. Unless there is emotional support between you, both feel isolated from each other. Married life is a huge responsibility, and there are tons of problems that often creep into your family life. So it's only natural that you seek the emotional support of your spouse. And when you're given emotional support by your spouse, you feel protected and sheltered in your relationship. It is the same with your spouse. He or she also needs your emotional support. Most of you coolly ignore the emotional turmoil the other is undergoing as none of your business. By being apathetic towards the emotional needs of your spouse, you're only making him or her feel that you're uncaring and unloving. So, never ever leave your spouse in the lurch when he or she is undergoing stressful problems. When you support your spouse unconditionally, you convey the message, "I'm always with you." Considering the problems faced by your spouse as your own builds your relationship. It also makes your spouse feel protected by you. The number three aspect to be evaluated in your marriage is the level of personal space you allow to your spouse. The importance of personal space in your marriage cannot be underestimated by you. When you breathe down the neck of your spouse in the name of love, he or she feels suffocated. If you want your spouse to be at your beck and call 24/7, he or she feels jailed and imprisoned just living with you. When you question whatever your spouse does, he or she wonders how you could behave so arbitrarily. Though your spouse is married to you, it does not pluck away his or her liberty to enjoy doing things he or she likes doing. Your relationship will flourish and thrive only when you give that much of personal space to your spouse. Evaluate your marriage after inculcating personal space into your relationship and you'll be amazed by the positive result it has brought about. The number four aspect you should evaluate in your marriage is the level of being presentable at home. Most of you ignore being presentable at home has nothing to do with your marriage. You do not understand that looking presentable before your spouse increases the volume of attraction between you. During your dating days, both were always eager to look your best. But after your marriage, you totally let yourself go. You become flabby. You're invariably disheveled and unkempt when at home. You do not realize that your spouse feels tense and irritated just looking at you. Being physically attractive is essential to keep the interest of your spouse in you alive. It is sad that while you take care to look your best to the outside world, you present a totally shabby picture when at home. So take efforts to look presentable to your spouse. It easily attracts him or her towards you. So maintain your body and make sure that you do not put on oodles of flab in your body. Wear well-fitting clothes when at home. Being presentable is crucial to be physically attractive to your spouse. The number 5 aspect to be evaluated in your marriage is the level of your listening to your spouse. Mostly, you do not listen to your spouse as you feel he or she is making much ado about nothing. You're wrong. When you do not listen to your spouse, he or she feels that you're uncaring towards his or her problems. By not listening to your spouse, you make him or her feel lost and alone. But when you listen with empathy, it makes your spouse feel cared and loved by you. When you utter consoling words to your spouse, he or she instantly feels the intensity of his or her problems decreasing. Listening empathetically to your spouse is an essential ingredient for a happy marriage. The number 6 aspect to evaluate in your marriage is the level of your communication. Mostly, you only communicate with your spouse about some important family issues. Talking about family issues always evokes arguments and counter-arguments. This is not the way to communicate with your spouse. You should talk about anything under the sky with your spouse. Talking about films, sports, politics and family gossips make your conversation lively and interesting. The number 7 aspect to be evaluated in your marriage is the level of time you spend together. It is very common to see couples glued to the mobile even when they are together. This is not the togetherness your marriage needs. Your real togetherness is when you spend your time sharing hobbies, doing gardening, going for walks, talking about things that interest both. Quality time spent together is your investment towards a happy relationship. The number 8 aspect to be evaluated in your marriage is the level of companionship you enjoy with your spouse. You must evaluate your marriage to see whether you enjoy good companionship with your spouse. Do you take the words of your spouse literally and pick up fights with him or her? Do you search for topics to talk with your spouse? Do you feel you have nothing in common with your spouse? If the answer to these questions is a yes, it means you're not enjoying good companionship with your spouse. Here are some simple tricks. Spend quality time with your spouse. Laugh together. Share common hobbies with your spouse. It will make you spend hours discussing about it. Watch TV together. Take whatever your spouse says in the true spirit. Respect each other. You can enjoy excellent relationship with your spouse only when there is easy communication between you. The number 9 aspect you should evaluate in your marriage is the level of respect you show each other. Your marriage cannot survive without mutual respect. When you respect your spouse, you do not compare him or her with others. You like your spouse for what he or she is. When you respect your spouse, you become appreciative and encouraging. You do not take your spouse for granted. The number 10 aspect to be evaluated in your marriage is the level of your arguments. Arguments are part and parcel of any marriage. It is very natural that you flare up against your spouse when you are in your mood swings. But when you argue with your spouse just for the sake of arguing, then something is wrong with your marriage. When your arguments are bitter and ferocious, it just showcases that you have drifted too far away from each other. When you do not make up after your arguments, it just shows how much you disregard the feelings of your spouse. Only when you evaluate your marriage, you will understand the missing qualities in your relationship. There is always room for improvement in your marriage. So make efforts to evaluate where you go wrong in your relationship to help you enjoy a good married life. Did this video make you understand why you must evaluate your marriage? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.